I forgot the sign. We'll be starting soon. Just waiting a few moments so it's actually 9 a.m. Before we get started. Caroline, I have it on mute, so you won't be able to hear it on my computer. Hopefully people can hear it.
Oh.
Okay, but this is good.
But they can hear you.
I would hope so.
Tell us about your morning.
Who wrote that? Oh. You talking to me, Lishka? My morning? My morning's been fine. Oh, the weather. We forgot to think about the weather actually happening at 9 a.m. Brandon's going out to check cloud cover, and Caroline is getting some information from our weather station. Though she probably has to wait a couple minutes for that to actually come through.
Oh yeah, I did mess that up.
You messed up.
It's overcast.
But what type of clouds?
Yeah.
So the weather is something that we do 3 times a day here. We take information on the weather 3 times a day, and a lot of it is partially automated with a weather station, but some of it we actually go and look outside for real. Can you, Brandon, tell me on my phone is there a number of people there?
Yeah, we got 12 people.
All right, so I think that means it's time to get started, and especially Lishka, if you can let me know if the sound, it seems all right. That would be very helpful to know if I need to speak any louder or not. All right, so I'll go ahead and start and say welcome to the Palomarin Field Station of Point Blue Conservation Science. We were hoping, as you probably saw, to do another banding demonstration out at our Pine Gulch Creek banding site on the Bolinas Lagoon today, but the weather is poor, we'll say, for banding at least, but we are very much hoping that we're going to get some more rain. We've had kind of a very low amount of rain this winter, so we're hoping to get as much as we can. But we've got kind of wind, not rain, not too much rain yet. But we will be, as the months go by, we'll still be doing some banding demonstrations, and we'll get back out and show you some birds. But as with field work, it's very much weather dependent, so we need to kind of change our work as the weather changes, and so we went ahead and just decided to do more of a live, that's kind of more of a question and answer with a couple of our interns. And yeah, we'll see that. I'm going to kind of introduce kind of what's going on here. I forgot to already introduce myself. My name is Mark Detling, and I'm an avian ecologist here at Point Blue. I work a lot of my time with the banding internships here at the field station. Yeah, you'll notice, of course, we're following our kind of COVID protocols, so you'll see we're indoors, we're wearing masks, and as much as we can, kind of keeping our 6-foot distance. The interns are in a pod together, so you'll see them at one point, they'll be sitting much closer together. But yeah. So the kind of topic today is, well, we're going to be talking about something that our intern crews have been doing for the past 10 or 12 years or something, and we call them Capstone Projects. And first of all, maybe I'll talk a little bit about just the internship program in general, and how the Palomarin Field Station, since its beginning, has relied upon, but also taken advantage of, not taken advantage, but taken the opportunity to work with volunteers and interns. And so it's always been a part of the field station to be able to kind of teach these skills these field work skills, banding or nest searching, education, kind of environmental education to young biologists or folks starting in their biology careers. So it's something that's always been a pretty big focus of the field station. We're able to collect some really awesome data that you'll see. You know, if you go to the Palomarin Data Explorer website, you'll see all this great data, and that is mostly collected by our interns and volunteers. More recently, it's pretty much been interns, and over the past 20, 15 years, we've really worked to improve the experience of the interns. And part of one of the things that we did is that we were learning from our kind of education staff here at Point Blue that we should really come up with specific learning outcomes. And so a while back we did that, and we came up with a set of topics that we wanted to make sure that each intern left with having some exposure to and gaining knowledge in those different areas. And one of the ways that we do that, we're always kind of just in general conversations, we're talking about these topics during we have weekly meetings that we often do discussions about scientific journal articles to talk about these topics. But a big one is what we call Capstone Projects. And so these are projects that the interns, it's a self-directed project that the interns work to develop, and we ask them to use it to kind of demonstrate somehow they're learning one or multiple of those different learning outcomes. We try to keep it as open-ended as possible so that the projects range widely in what they are and what topics they address. We've had projects that are very much data-driven, where someone wanted to kind of dive deeper into one aspect of the data that we have here, or they're more interested in the outreach aspect, and it's something that may be posted in our visitor center, or they're working to, I remember an intern from the Dominican Republic who wanted to help translate parts of our handbook so that future Spanish-speaking interns would have that as a resource. So there's a wide range of things that the interns have chosen to do, and it's always really exciting to see what they come up with. We pair each of the interns with a Point Blue staff person to help answer questions and potentially guide the project throughout the season. This happens usually over the course of, I would say, 3 months. Has that been 2 or 3 months? Kind of depending on the project and also the season. Some seasons are shorter than others. So that's the kind of general overview of what these capstone projects are. And so we thought today that just recently, this was a week ago, the interns, the current set of interns, they presented on their final capstone projects. And they were able to present to staff here at the field station as well as some other staff just around all of Point Blue. Because of the pandemic, we had it over Zoom, and so we were able to make it more widely available to other staff. And we thought it would be great to share with the Facebook and kind of our wider community as well. And so two of the 4 interns are working today, and so they are lucky enough and they were gracious enough to say yes to talking a little bit more about their capstones. So we're going to have Caroline and Brandon, and I'll let them, a little bit introduce themselves a little bit more than that. But the kind of general thing we'll do is that Caroline will talk about her project for a little bit, and then Brandon will. And then at the end after they have both spoken, we'll try to get into some questions. I would like maybe, Caroline, if you can look and see if there's any general questions before I turn it over to you.
Let's see. No more questions, just some comments from Leachco.
All right.
And more people have been joining.
Awesome. So welcome to the folks that are joining, and so now we're gonna get ready to turn it over to our interns to give you a little bit of information about what they are up to for their capstone projects.
Okay. Hello, my name is Caroline Provost. I moved here from North Carolina, and I've been working here with Point Blue for about a year now. I started out with the Northern Spotted Owl internship, and then in the fall I started banding, and tomorrow is my last day of being a bird bander here. So for my capstone, I wanted to look into some data. I've done a lot of field work in the past, but I'd never looked into the data or worked with it, so that was a little intimidating for me. So for my project, I was exploring methods of how we monitor birds here at Palomarin. There are several different ways to monitor birds, and these field jobs are temporary, so I'm always thinking of what I want to do next and what I'd be best at. And I like to take into account how different projects monitor their birds and what kind of bird species they're working with. So here at Palomarin, we misnet and ban birds, and we also perform area search surveys. The area search surveys are 30 minutes long, and within the first 2 hours of sunrise of each banding day, we go out and walk the net trail, and we record any bird detections that we have. So for my project, I compared the two methods of area search versus bird banding to see which method would first detect first of season arrivals. So I chose to look at wintering species, the varied thrush, ruby-crowned kinglet, fox sparrow, and golden crowned sparrow. And I chose two species, the varied thrush and ruby-crowned kinglet, because they have more distinctive vocalizations during the winter, whereas the fox sparrow and golden crowned sparrow have very inconspicuous vocalizations during the winter. So I hypothesized that these species with very distinct vocalizations would be, upon their arrival, would be first detected by area searches rather than banding. Because I think those species were more prone to hear and detect by ear, whereas banding, we just have to wait to capture those birds. And so I hypothesized that for the varied thrush and ruby-crowned kinglet, we would hear them first during our area search surveys. So go ahead and show some plots I made. I did some, let's do varied thrush first. So I did this work in R. I'd never done any work in R. I haven't really done any work with data before. So this was fun. This plot here is for the varied thrush, and this one has a very unique song. So I hypothesized that it would be detected by our area search first, and the results supported my hypothesis. Area search is in all blue. And then the banding captures are in orange, so you can see for most years the varied thrush was detected by area search before it was captured in a mist net. Okay, and so this data is over the course of 17 years. We've been banding, and we have banding data going back to the 60s, but we didn't start performing area searches until 2004. So therefore, the data I'm working with is from 2004 to 2020, and that's 17 years of data, so that's still a lot. Good information we're looking at. And then the next plot, this one is for the golden crown sparrow. This was one of the more inconspicuous species during the winter. They have a very subtle chip note, and I hypothesized that they would be detected by banding and mistnet captures for most years compared to the area search surveys. And my results again supported my hypothesis. For almost all of the years, the golden crown sparrow was detected by a mistnet capture previous to the area search detection. So I'm only going to show those two plots, but the other two species kind of correlated with that trend as well. It was also interesting to see discrepancies in the data and compare the plots for all four species to see which species arrive before the other. For these capstones, we have mentors, and my mentor was Renee Cormier. She was also my supervisor for the Northern Spotted Owl season, and she helped me navigate through R and provided me with some code. Very helpful. Since we're social distancing due to the pandemic, we did all of our meetings over Zoom, and we made it work. So I was very impressed with that and thankful. So I learned a lot from this process. Working in R and working with data is a lot less intimidating for me now, and it's also very interesting. I didn't think that I would enjoy it very much because I just like working in the field. I've always thought that I don't like doing office work, but I knew that it's important and that I should learn more about it and gain more experience in that. And now that I have, I will say I do enjoy it. It is fun to see the outcome, and it's not that intimidating. And I also learned some more about our wintering species here. I hear these species and sometimes catch them in mistnets. So it's really cool to look at their data over a span of 17 years. Let's see. So yeah, I'll just wrap it up with that.
Yeah. So thanks, Caroline. And again, I see there's a couple questions that popped up. Yeah, we'll clap here. Yay! And we'll answer questions at the end. I think would be better. So Brandon is going to come up next here.
All right. Hey, y'all. My name is Brandon Donahue. I'm from the Austin, Texas area. I've been with Point Blue for just over a year now. Started last summer as a bander and then continued on through this fall and winter. So with my capstone, I kind of wanted to learn a bit more about what it was like to do some work on an observational study. And I think I achieved that. All right, so for my paper, it was sparked by me seeing two Wrentits that had color bands at Pine Gulch, and I'll talk a little bit more about that area now. So the two spots, or the two areas that I'm going to be discussing, the first one is here at Palo. We've been banding here for over 50 years now, and we have a good set of data here. And so here at Palo, the habitat started out mostly as coastal scrub, but as time has gone on, some of the Douglas fir has moved in. We do banding operations here, and part of those banding operations includes putting color bands on Wrentits. Another location that we band at is Pine Gulch, which is just down the road, about 15 minutes. It's on the Bolinas Lagoon. It's a riparian area, so it has a creek running through it with lots of willows and alders. And so that's the second location. So a little bit about Wrentits. They're the most sedentary songbird species in North America. They typically start making a breeding territory with a pair, like they mate for life, and they make a territory that lasts for their whole lives. That territory is usually set up less than 400 meters from where they hatch, so they don't really move much in their lives. Let's see. Yeah, so we know this this number of less than 400. It comes from a paper from 1995, which was written in part by Jeff Geipel, who is a big figure with Point Blue and has been for a long time. That was from a 12-year data set here at Palomarin. And so in that study, they found that average and median dispersal distances were under 400 meters, with the longest one being 700 meters. And so just a little bit more in general, natal dispersal or natal dispersion, which is kind of the topic of this paper, it's kind of defined as the process through which an immature individual permanently leaves their natal area in search of new sites. So then also another resource, Birds of North America, talks a little bit about this with the species and says that occasionally juvenile individuals will travel up to 450 meters away from their natal area, but still it's a pretty short average dispersal distance. So with my paper, I kind of focused in on some instances that have been observed around Palo of birds traveling much further than this thought of 400 meters. So in 2008, there was a wrentit that was banded as a nestling at Palo, and 3 months later, it was recaptured in mist nets at Pine Gulch. So this dispersal distance was 4,300 kilometers, which is much further than the average, less than 400. And this is actually the longest wrentit dispersal we have records for. In 2018, there was a color-banded wrentit that was seen by a visitor to Palo, but they saw it down near the coast trail, and that bird happened to have a dispersal distance of about 1,000 meters, which again is 2.5 times the average. And then this fall, which kind of the event that kind of sparked me writing this paper, I came across a pair of color-banded wrentits at Pine Gulch. Both these birds had been banded as hatch-year birds, meaning they were born this past year. And they were together at Pine Gulch, and so their dispersal distance was both 4,100 meters, which again is a lot further than the average of less than 400 meters. And this is the longest paired dispersal event that we have records for. And let's see. Yeah, so just some closing statements. I feel like I learned a lot about how to do observational studies from doing this capstone. I had a lot of help from my capstone mentor, Mark Detling, who you just saw a little bit ago, and you'll likely see again soon. I feel like I learned quite a bit from this.
Great. Thanks. So, Caroline, if you want to just get a chair up there. I'll just respond to Elizabeth. Hopefully you can hear me, I'm pretty close to the microphone. Is that, yes, Brandon, the species it is talking about is Wrentit, and that's actually one word, and it is kind of a mix in its appearance of a wren and a tit, a chickadee type thing. But yeah, it's one of our favorite birds here at the Palomarin Field Station. So I would really we'd like to get some questions, but we will have a little bit of time. We're not gonna probably spend the whole 45 minutes we normally do. We might just kind of cap it once all the questions are answered. And I know that so earlier there was a question it was actually from Lishka for Caroline on if you had heard of any other people exploring this similar question.
No, I hadn't heard of anyone else exploring this question. I discussed the topic some with Diana Humpel, and she works with the methods at Palomarin, and she helped me come up with this question. But I did not really reference any other past papers or projects for this.
Okay, and another one. So your results?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the data that you kind of gathered here? Does this make you? Has anything in this made you think of climate change and how these first arrival dates might have been changing, or was that not really part?
No, that's not really. I wasn't going that much in depth. This is just like a preliminary thing, and eventually this data may build into a project studying climate change. And I wasn't so much looking at how the arrival dates change over the year. I was more so comparing the arrival dates from captures versus area search detections. But I hope that this data could lead into a project studying climate change and how arrival dates of fall migrants change from climate change.
Cool. And I'll add just one thing, that when you start getting more and more into this data, the definition of what the first arrival date actually can be kind of variable, and it's something that you have to choose on what you do. So Caroline was looking at the absolute first individual that was detected, and that may or may not be as helpful if you're looking for general trends across time, because that individual bird might just be a really big outlier compared to the rest of the kind of population that is coming down. So interesting stuff to continue researching. And Brandon, Leash could have a question of, do you know about some other dispersal distances for species that are not as sedentary? Did you come across any of that info?
No, I didn't. So I really was only focusing on Wrentits as the focal species for this. Yeah, I didn't really look at any other species.
Yeah, and it really is quite variable. I don't know any actual distances either, Lishka, so that's definitely something we'd have to look up and see. I know we have some work with very early on for song sparrows that Christy DeBala did. She works for Point Blue currently, but did her work, her PhD work here at the field station. But that was only for the first few weeks or months of a bird's life. So, but we have some information like that. She's got a lot of questions here. Sorry, I'm trying to look through the questions here. Sorry if you guys talk amongst yourselves. Leash got a question for both of you, maybe your best and then most challenging moments during these capstone projects. Start with you, Caroline.
Okay. Yeah, I like that question. The most challenging moments were when I was trying to figure out code in R to make these plots. I'm glad you mentioned this because before I forgot to mention that it can be a little frustrating, and I did enjoy working with the data, but there are definitely frustrating moments when the code just wasn't working how I wanted it to. But after I made the first plot, I just had to put the data for the other birds and use that same exact code. So after the first one, it was pretty easy after that. And my favorite part was when I pressed enter and that plot just popped up exactly how I wanted it to be. And I was able to see the data, and it was just beautiful. I never thought I'd say that about a plot. But yeah, after putting a little work in, it's nice to see the finished product. And I also really enjoyed presenting on the data to all of the Point Blue staff and to all of you as well.
Yeah, so for me, I think one of the biggest challenges was working with some of the historical data, especially that from the 90s. So at Pine Gulch in the first few years, they did put color bands on Wrentits. So some of my work was splitting away those original Wrentits from ones that had been banded here at Palo and then moved there. So there was a bit more work having to be done with some like research and discovery of what data might be significant and what might not be very useful for my project.
Cool. I'm going to answer one quick question that Elizabeth had about, I think it was the Wrentits, and asking what time of year they were here. And the Wrentits are here year-round. They don't migrate at all, and so they live, Brandon was saying how they have that territory for their entire life, so they just stay on that territory their entire life. It can be a very small amount of space. I think, yeah, maybe we'll do, Christy threw in another question, and I think maybe this one will be our last question. We'll finish up with you two, and then I'll wrap everything up. But Christy wanted to know if you could spend more time on these projects or investigate these questions further, what would you recommend doing next?
Okay, I'll start. I would recommend looking at a third method of monitoring birds, and that is looking at eBird lists. So I think there are plenty of species that we wouldn't capture in the mist nets as much, and we may not detect during that 30-minute area search, but they're present here at Palo. They'll fly over, or they'll be off of our area search plot, or maybe we'll just detect them outside of that 30-minute window. And we make an eBird list here at Palo every single day, and I think it'd be really fun to dive into that data because I think some species would be first detected by eBird more than both area search and banding captures.
Yeah, so I think I will be working on this project a little bit more. Mark and I kind of have a little goal of hoping to submit this paper as a note to a scientific journal for publication. So I still have more editing to do on the paper and probably not very much more research to do, but more so just going through the document and cleaning it up a bit.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, I think Yeah, I'll just come back on screen. Thank you. Yeah, so that is just a little taste of kind of the intern life and a big project that they get to work on throughout much of their time. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all the questions. We'll see if we can answer those just in the comments there. So just take a look in the comments and see if we can see if we can get to those questions. Hopefully, pretty soon. I am looking outside. That's you see. I'm distracted because we are getting some rain, which is very exciting. And so we'll be watching the radar and our rain gauge all day, and hopefully we'll see those numbers tick up. So thanks for joining us. And here at the Palomarin Field Station, Point Blue, we're very much heavily supported by you, our kind of faithful viewers and folks that really love Palomarin and Point Blue. So go to the webpage. There's a donate button. Tell your friends and family. We're definitely always looking to increase our funding here so that we can have more of these opportunities for young biologists. All right. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time. Bye.